morning, everyone. My name is Hunter Huber. I'm a technical sales representative here at OGI Process Equipment. Today, I'll be going over our QuikWater rental system, how they differ a little bit from a boiler, and then a little bit to know beforehand. So thank you all for joining us this morning, and we'll go ahead and get started. As always, we'll start off a little bit about OGI. So OGI is a proudly women-owned business. OGI stands for Oil, Gas, and Industrial Process Equipment. We design, manufacture, sell, and service both our tear-brown water heaters and our QuikWater direct contact water heaters. As well, we have a full ULC-listed process control panel shop. OGI serves the natural gas industry as well as any industry that requires hot water, may that be government agencies, pharmaceutical, concrete, food and beverage, you name it, we have something in there. And as well as I mentioned, we are proud to be a certified women-owned business. We've been in business for 32 years, and we are headquartered here in Sand Springs, Oklahoma. A little bit about our facility and capabilities. We have a 50,000 square feet manufacturing facility. With that, we have a CNC plasma burn table, 60-ton lifting capacity, both automated and manual welding, an on-site paint facility for all of our QuikWater and Terra units, as well as I mentioned, a UL-listed electrical panel shop for any controls or process controllers for our units. We as well do non-destructive testing here at OGI and all in-house manufacturing. A little bit briefly about some additional services we do here. We have a dedicated service department for all QuikWater and Terra units. We go on startups. We do preventative maintenance for those units. And as well, we have on-field training for any of those, be it preventive maintenance or startup on your units. A little bit of post-sale support we have. We have a dedicated parts sales team. We tend to stock those parts that we see most often being used. So I tend to have a decent stocking solution here. But we do different modifications, upgrades. So say when your QuikWater unit is running on natural gas, you want to convert over to propane, that's something we can absolutely do for you here. As well, we have a 24/7 on-call service department. So the topics we'll be covering today, we'll be going over QuikWater versus a boiler, a little bit of the differences between those, a mobile rental overview, and then as well the service side for these rentals. So as I mentioned, starting off, we'll be going over a little bit of boilers, which you see with the rental boiler, commonalities we see there. We'll mainly be focusing on a hot water boiler. So typically those are constructed with a carbon steel shell. Those operating pressure is going to be about 160 psi for 250 degree Fahrenheit water. They tend to have a little bit of overpressure protection, being a VR stamped relief valve and required annual testing and repair for these units. As well, it's very common for most states and large cities to have a licensed boiler operator required to be working on these units. As far as construction goes, boiler is going to be slightly heavy, have a larger footprint. You can see here in these pictures shown, there's going to be a water tube hot water boiler. As far as a high temperature protection goes, they're going to have a refractory, typically on your access doors and panels, and specifically on that burner cone itself. So with that weight, it's going to be heavy with the shell and the tubes going through them, as well as containing a large amount of water in there. That refractory is going to be required on all components that are going to be exposed to a high temperature or some gas. Any combustion paths, doors, panels, and like I mentioned, the burner cone. Additionally, for a boiler, you're going to have to do a feed water treatment to them. So they're going to be highly sensitive to water quality. So typically, you're going to see a demineralized or deionized water used on a feed water boiler. A little bit about this, it's mainly just prevent some scale deposits, any soft sludge deposits building up inside of that boiler. It's going to protect often, so you kind of have to build in some downtime for the repairs on that. It's also going to be eliminating any corrosive gases from the boiler supply water or any intercrystalline cracking or caustic embrittlement you'll see on that boiler. As far as the design of the boiler goes, your combustion chamber is going to be typically either a submerged, it's going to have multiple passes, typically 2, 3, or 4, whereas the QuikWater, we just have a single pass in our combustion chamber. And as well, a boiler is going to be an indirect contact heating solution. Stack temperatures on a boiler are typically going to range from about 300 to 500 degrees Fahrenheit, and that also depends what you're running with your process, how hot you need your water or your steam. As well, the thermal efficiencies are going to vary based on the number of combustion chambers, the number of passes, and that exhaust stack temperature. And then additionally, conventional boilers are typically going to require a external heat exchanger, especially in a NSF type situation where you can have that direct contact with it. Each different heat exchanger interface that you're going to be incorporating there is going to lower that efficiency slightly whenever it gets to your actual sanitation stations. And then you can increase your performance of your boiler by using a condensate treatment, such as a economizer, to gather back some of that condensing water. As far as the heating process goes, in a hot water boiler, you're going to have that circulating system going around the shell of the two exchangers, typically with a treated water or a water glycol. A couple of things to note whenever you're looking at a rinse heater for your facility. What's going to be coming with that rinse boiler? Are you going to need an economizer to go with it? This is going to be an NSF bottled water stamped. With that, you have to rent as well a heat exchanger to go along with it. You need steam header valves. There's a multitude of different things. As well as I mentioned earlier, do you need a boiler technician for this heater that you're bringing on to your facility? As well, do you have to look into a insurance for the boiler to be there as well? So all that being mentioned, kind of one of our brief overview of boilers, so we can kind of dive into a little bit on the QuikWater itself. So the QuikWater is going to be designed to keep both in cyclical and continuous operations. It's going to be using our water-cooled firing chamber, our vertical heat transfer zone. All QuikWater units are going to be at least 90% efficient. They run off that inlet water temperature that you have going into it. So the cooler your water temperature coming in, the more efficient QuikWater is going to be operating. And as well, all QuikWater units are going to be manufactured from stainless steel. They're all going to be operating at an atmospheric pressure. Really the only pressure generated by the QuikWater is going to be from the transfer pump out to your system. So whatever you have that size to, whether it be 45 PSI all the way up to maybe 500 PSI for that transfer pump pressure, that will be the only pressure generated through the system. And then lastly, the feed water for a QuikWater, as I mentioned, for a boiler, you may have to have a deionized, demineralized, softened water for your boiler system. Whereas the QuikWater, if you're using it, especially for rinse solution, you can tie that directly into your city water line. That hardness won't matter as much for a QuikWater, especially if you're just using it in a 3-month to 6-month time span. You're not really going to be noticing that scale buildup you may have over an 8-month period, or sorry, 8-year period of usage on there. Additionally, we've designed the QuikWater to go on many different water supply systems. So we've actually had several units down in Louisiana that have been getting their feed water from different ponds for alligator keep solutions. And as I mentioned earlier, the QuikWater is going to be more efficient based on your inlet water temperature. That being said, the flue gases leaving the QuikWater are only going to be about 20 degrees higher than they were coming in at that water. So if you have about 40 degree in the water coming in, you can expect your flue gas temperature to be at 60 degrees leaving from the top of the stack. So how does QuikWater work? As I mentioned, our incoming cold water droplets are going to fall through our spray nozzle at the very top of the QuikWater. And that's going to make sure that you have that full conical spray passing down through your packing. As it is approaching that packing, it's going to be expanding the area for the heat transfer media. So you're going to see 99% of our heat transfer being captured in this small little section here with this stainless steel packing. Essentially, great that area. You're going to be capturing as much heat as possible. Additionally, as the burner is firing, water is going to be circulating through our firing chamber. As long as the burner is on and operating, this water will be cycling through. This will be here to protect from any hot spots on the QuikWater, as well as keep that water cooling the outside of the jackets. And finally, that water is going to be gravity fed down to the QuikWater. As it passes through the packing, it's heated up by that combustion gas, collecting in our internal reservoir tank, ready to be pumped out to your solution whenever you need. So going over a couple of the key points I've kind of went over here for a QuikWater versus a boiler, how it may play into how you want to approach a rental situation. Boilers are typically made out of that carbon steel, whereas QuikWater is always being manufactured with stainless steel. Operating pressures, as I mentioned, the QuikWater is always going to be an atmospheric vessel. You have no need for any ASME labels on there. You don't need the yearly shutdown and inspection as you would for a boiler in that regard. As well, boiler operator and insurance, whereas many states have a boiler operator required for their process, as I know we do here in Oklahoma. The QuikWater is not required for that, so your standard maintenance team can work on them and be running at all times. As far as thermal efficiency goes, with their standard boiler being 65 to 85% efficient, the QuikWater in the one-pass situation going through with your inlet water 40 degrees, outlet of 180, going to be 99% efficient. One large thing to think about is that water treatment, as I mentioned, for all of our QuikWater rentals. We can go ahead and just tie them up directly into your city water feed, regardless of that hardness on there. Whereas with a boiler, you may have to have a softener already at that facility or have a demineralized or deionized water. And then lastly, the stack temperatures are going to be much, much less on the QuikWater. As I mentioned, 20 degrees Fahrenheit above that inlet temperature, whereas you see the high stack temperatures coming out of a boiler system here. So just a couple things to keep in mind whenever you're approaching your rental, how to go, whether you want to go with a boiler or a direct contact water heater. So diving into our newest design for our rental heaters, I kind of have a external view listed. With this, we're going to include our exhaust port. We have several vents all across the container, and as well a louver system, which we have programmed in to open up as the QuikWater burner comes on. So when that EMS system is calling for a call for heat on the QuikWater, that louver is going to actuate, allowing for the necessary combustion air on the blower for the QuikWater. So essentially, covering the unit, you don't need to have an external cover. You don't need to make sure that the QuikWater is being before, since everything is covered and all supported within our container here. Going over to an internal view of the QuikWater, I took a little cutaway here where you can kind of see how the internal workings of it go. On the next slide, we'll actually be getting into the connections on the QuikWater and how you go ahead and set those up. But you can see here, it's our standard QuikWater design. We've went ahead and lengthened that tank for you to go ahead and fit it in there. Moving over to connections, the QuikWater can really be installed via 5 simple connection points within this. First, we have our electrical connection. So your electrical disconnects will go ahead and go here. All the QuikWater rentals that we have within this are going to be 460 volts, so just a standard for us. For any Canadian ones, we can go ahead and design the 575. If you have a lesser voltage, we can go ahead and change out the pump motors on there, make some changes for the control panel as well if needed. Additionally, we have our gas inlet for your tie-in, our water inlet for your city water line, the drain for any overflow situations on that QuikWater system. That way, you're not flooding anything. And then lastly, your water outlet to be pumped to your facility. Each QuikWater rental is going to include startup by an OGI technician on site. So with that startup, we're going to be coming out, checking out this unit, making sure that everything is plugged in correctly. We'll verify your site emissions verifications, as well as bleaching the burner, make sure everything is the same as when it left our facility. and then run a safety deployment check on every single safety that we have on our QuikWater, re-verifying everything. So we go ahead and with all of our rentals, we do the same back testing procedure that we do here at OGI on each QuikWater that leaves our facility brand new. So as these come back from any previous user, we go ahead and do any repair necessary on them, re-put them through every single test, check every box on there on, I want to say, on 112-step that procedure on there. So we do a great job on making sure that these are going back out as great as they did the first time. A little bit about the rental capabilities that we have. So currently with our rentals, we offer a model 5000 and a model 3500. So with the specifications listed down there at the bottom, someone approaches me and they need 100 gallons per minute, they have a 40-degree inlet, and their outlet's going to be 140. So they just want a standard food and beverage, sanitation, wash down specification for there, and just figure this one out. So we can go ahead, we can check this chart. We're at a 100-degree temperature rise, and looking up to the right for our gallons per minute, you can find 100 here. Scrolling up to a model that would be, we go ahead and recommend our model 5000 for this application. So it's very easy to check on what you need here, or if you just approach, you just know what duty you require, we can always back into that. And as well, we can adjust that flow rate to whatever we need, as long as it fits on the pump curve of that transfer pump that we have specified within it. Always happy to put on, a globe valve on a discharge to essentially lessen that flow. Puts more back pressure on that pump. If you only need about 90 gallons per minute, you don't want to overflow something. A couple important rental pre-shipping verifications for each facility. So to start, we'll go ahead and make sure that you have a correctly sized regulator on site for this unit. You can find that here. So on each rental unit, you will have a specification sheet listed that I'll go ahead and send. So for this specific example, we have our pressure listed as 14 inches to 42 inches water column at 5,000 SCFH. You want to assure that the regulator that you have sized is going to be working for this, especially if you have a low NOx burner attached on these units. They tend to be a little more finicky with that pressure going into them. Secondly, can the inlet water pressure and flow rate be provided at your site? So for this one, we have your minimum inlet pressure sized as 23 psi. The minimum lead at the nozzle is going to be 15 psi. And as well, that inlet flow is going to be 125 gallons per minute. So you have that inflow coming in. You want to verify that your facility is able to give that 125 gallons per minute with that proper pressure for this unit to operate at its peak conditions. Next, the discharge pressure for the QuikWater. Is this going to be adequate enough for your process? Is it going to be not enough? Will you require a booster pump tacked on to this rental? So for this design, we have a 100 PSIG at that 125 gallons per minute. If you need, say, 200 going through your piping in your hot water loop, we can go ahead and work on getting a booster pump that you need to supply that extra PSI. And lastly, you can verify the electrical supply and amperage can be met, as well as I mentioned earlier. This unit is going to be 460 volts, your standard three-phase 60 hertz, and then the service requirement for this one is going to be 50 amps. And then one last important thing to note is how are we going to unload it? So for these units that we have contained, there's going to be forklift pockets on them. You just want to make sure that you have the properly sized forklift to be able to lift these up off the truck once they arrive to your facility and place them down where you'll have them placed. Going over some component locations briefly on the QuikWater, we'll go ahead and start at left to right. So start with our chamber high temperature switch. This is going to be monitoring the chamber temperature as it's going across. Make sure you're not overheating that in any regard for the burner overfire. Both our recirculation valve and our inlet valve, these are going to be modulating off and on depending on the heater. So whether you're feeding your fresh city water in through your inlet valve or you're recirculating the water within the tank to get back up to temperature after a point of non-usage. That's where we have our chamber flow switch. This is essentially just going to be monitoring that you have flow going throughout your QuikWater chamber. As I mentioned, we have our water-cooled firing chamber. Without water going through that chamber, the burner will tend to switch off. That way you are not overheating your QuikWater or affecting the usage of that firing chamber. Next, our stack temperature probe. This will be monitoring the heat coming up through the packing of that water. If you're over temping and starting to burn any of that packing, this will also go ahead and start to ramp down the QuikWater. Our inlet pressure switch is going to be monitoring that correct inlet pressure and flow as it's coming out through our nozzle. This is important to know. Like I mentioned earlier, you want to verify that you have the correct pressure and flow available at your facility so we can meet this safety, allowing for the complete conical spray across the QuikWater packing. Our central control panel, where our HMI and emergency stop button will be located on each unit. And lastly, our tank and temperature probes, along with the level floats. So these will be monitoring your call for fill on the QuikWater unit and the recirculation. So once this reaches a certain point, we'll go ahead and cut off that inlet valve. If the water is still not at temperature, we'll go ahead and initiate that recirculation valve, get that water up to temperature in the internal tank, and have it contact your process. So flipping over to the gas drain side, we're going to have 4 components over here of note. So that'll be our low gas pressure switch, our main gas valve, our high gas pressure switch, and our pilot gas valve. So essentially, at our pilot gas valve, we want to make sure that we have typically around 3 psi for full fire on these units. And another thing that I mentioned, we have the specifications listed on each spec sheet for them. To properly size a regulator for your facility. That way we have no issues with our gas going through. Next, a little bit about the HMI and troubleshooting. Specifically with these units for our rentals, we're going to have it equipped with a Automation Direct Seymour HMI. That HMI comes standard with an internet connection. So you can actually remote monitor any alarms from your system, what water temperature you're pumping out at. Essentially, if there's anything wrong with it, you can see it via the internet on that connection. So looking at the heater overview screen, whenever your tech comes for the startup on here, you'll go ahead and enable the heater, enable the burner up in that top right-hand section. If you want the QuikWater to not pump out water until it's met your specified temperature, say you want it to be 180, and you can't have cold water on your cleanup floor, you'll enable our warm-up mode on the bottom right-hand corner. This will make sure that the water is discharging at that 180 degrees. That way you don't have any cold water coming out of the nozzle heads on your spray floor. Next, we have our service screen. So you can see here, if there's anything red, there's going to be an issue with it. It's very easy to come in here, check this, and diagnose what is going on with your heater. So as shown here, we currently don't have the HMI heater enable and burner enable buttons pressed on that last screen. Therefore, they be yellow. Once those are enabled, those will turn green, as well as all of these safety chains that are currently red. Then personally, my favorite screen is going to be our alarm list. So this is something that would be very important. If you have any alarms that are coming up, say you have a inlet flow pressure switch alarm, you can easily go check what's going on here. You don't have to watch for any flashing lights to diagnose what's going on with your heater. And then you can go ahead and reach out almost immediately. OGI is a 24/7 hotline for service, as I mentioned at the very beginning. You can get there just by dialing our office number after hours. And as well, if you need any help during operating hours of 8 to 5, more than welcome to call in, and our service engineering team would be more than happy to help with that. So this is one screen that is really important to know how to get to diagnose what is going on with your heater and get that reset as soon as possible. And then kind of to wrap it up, I have a alarm description list of just most of the alarms on the QuikWater system. So I won't take the time to go through these. If you're going to read them over on the side, it shows each alarm, its trigger, With each rental unit, we're going to include the installation and operation manual with it whenever it ships. Within there, there'll be a troubleshooting guide for every single alarm description you see here, plus more that are a little bit more complicated within there. So you can go step by step through how to solve these alarms for your maintenance team on site. I know it can be a little bit daunting if you have a rental unit come in that your team may not be used to, so I want to make that as easy as possible for you to solve any possible issues that may come up as this unit is on your site for those several months. So with that, that is everything I have for you today. If you have any questions whatsoever, please feel free to go ahead and put them over on the right-hand side, and I'd be more than happy to get them. All right, well, I'll go ahead and wrap it up here. So I appreciate everyone for coming out to this webinar today. As I mentioned, if you have any questions, please feel free to give me a call or shoot me an email at hunter.cooper@ogi.com. And I appreciate it. Thanks, Rob.